All right, guys, how we doing today? So today is a little different. I'm gonna go ahead and change out my plugs on some new batteries I have. So my new batteries that I've gotten for my 2.0 and my X Max are SMC. So these are gonna be running in my 2.0 and my Max. They are a little big for the Max, but I have the extended chassis stuff for it. And so once I get the longer body for the Max, I'm gonna have the longer chassis Max, and I better put these in there. These do fit the Max like as is, but they are kind of tight. They kind of gotta be just, I don't know, they're a little too tight for my liking. It's really almost too tight for the front. Also, it's all smushed up. I don't like doing that. So I'm gonna hold off and run these in the Max right now. I may try to run them in the Max just to play around with it, but I'm not gonna do any kind of heavy jumping with these batteries until I get the bigger chassis installed on the Max. So anyway, so what we're doing is I'm changing out the QS8 connectors to the XT90 connectors. Now I do know that these don't hold as much amperage as the QS8 connectors. I run these on my X Max, but my Max and my 2.0 all run these connectors here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these connectors on this battery, and I'm gonna show you how I do it. And I'm not a pro at welding, at soldering, but I'm pretty good at it. If at some point down the road, if I start having problems with the wire getting too hot, the battery getting too hot, I'm gonna go ahead and change out to these all together, and I'll just run these on my 2.0 on my Max. It's all good. But right now, I'm putting these on. So what I do is, first things first, is you want to get your solder. So this is 6040 solder. I got it from Radio Shack, or actually I got it online. You do not want to get lead-free solder to do something like this, because it's not really made for this type of thing. It's kind of thin. That's really what you want. Got some flux. You want to flux the wire so it'll soak the solder into the wire. A mask. You want to use a mask here because this does have lead in it. You do not want to breathe those fumes in. So, yeah. And then you need a good soldering iron. So what I have here is I have the Heiko FX888D, which is like a little, hobbyist soldering iron, which is a really good soldering iron though. Super nice. I changed the tip on it. It came with a little bitty old thin tip. And this tip here is a month or so old or whatever, so it's doing its job. And really, really sweet. You always want to tin your pre-tin your tip and all. You see all this smoke though? You don't want to breathe none of that in. So I'm going to put the mask on and we'll get started. So first things first. What some guys do is they will unsolder the wire from the connector. Now that is, you can do that too, but the problem is once you pull this off, this cover, you gotta be kind of careful with this also, because you don't want this to arc in between them. If it's gonna arc right now on video for sure. So we're gonna get one side popped off. You gotta be really careful. There we go. This is my my Revo tuning thing. I use my Revo from THS, but it's to tune my nitro cars, but it'll work for this too. All right, so what you want to do is, so you can take the soldering iron and take this solder loose and make it like that. Make it loose like that. It all depends on how you want to do it. But the problem is if you drip this and it hits the other connector, it's going to arc. And a quick arc is not a big deal, but if you drip enough of this down in between here, it's going to arc and it's going to stay together. And you can have a situation on your hands. You got to cut this wire for you to smoking the battery. These are nice batteries. Sweet looking batteries, a lot of discharge. So I don't want to mess them up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one of the wires, and I'm going to do one of the wires at a time. So I already have my connector ready to go. I have both sides pre-tinned. These are brand new XT90 connectors. And what I do is you want to hook up the other side of the connector like this. So you want to hook it like that. So what happens is, as you're soldering, this gets pretty hot. And if you don't watch it, you can melt this this terminal or whatever. And what you'll get is the inside, there'll be, like, it'll get so hot it melts the plastic and it'll move a little bit, then it won't fit anymore. So the trick is to take the male side. This is the male, this is the female. Take the male side, put it on the female, and that transfers the heat a little better. So if it does get too hot, you know, it allows, one, the terminal to stay in place, and two, it allows the heat to transfer a little better where you don't get as hot directly on the plug. So really quick, I don't know if you don't know, you know, a little bit of biology, you can figure out yourself. This is the male side, this is the female side. So the male always has the prong, the female side always gets inserted. So, you know, not trying to be nasty, but that's how it is. That's how I've always learned it, and that's how I'm showing you. So male side has the prong, female side has the hole, if you will, you know, like that. So I take a pair of vice grips, and we're gonna hold it just like that. Make sure we're good and focused here. All right, so that's gonna be just like that. So move my stuff over a little bit. So here's how we're gonna do it. So I already have the plug pre-soldered. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this wire right here, and you want to hang on to this wire. Do not cut both wires at the same time. It'll arc both wires together. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut one wire at a time. Doesn't matter which one you cut, just cut one wire at a time. All right, just like that. I'll go ahead and while this wire's cut without this end on it, we're gonna pull it out of the little doohickey. I don't know what you call that little piece. Whoop, watch out, don't want to do that. And we're gonna go ahead and put the other piece on first. This is like the cover. This is gonna cover, you know, all the stuff here. So before you strip this wire, add this piece to it first. Do it your own way, you know, but that's how I do it, because there's been a lot of times where I've soldered a connector and this damn thing is only on one wire, not on any of the wires. You need to keep this on there. So like I said, this is going to cover this area here. Keeps it nice and clean looking. You know, it stops it from, you know, getting arced as easy. So on XT90 plugs, or on any of these plugs, the female side doesn't have a deep area put the wire. See, on these are kind of deeper looking. It kind of goes past this little lip. On the XT90, the little tray where the solder and the wire goes, it stops right here. On some of them, it goes deeper in there a little bit, you know. Like on the male side of XT90, it's like this, where it goes in deeper a little bit. So you want to make sure you make you strip your wire off for that length there, you know. So I don't have any kind of fancy equipment here. I have my soldering iron, that's it. And I have my knife here, all my tools. I don't have any soldering station. Well, I mean, I guess I got thought, but I don't have like a soldering helping hand thing, whatever. I don't have none of that. You don't need all that. You really don't. And whenever I have a problem on my truck, I do the same thing on my truck. My truck is just on my truck, and this is here. So get the wire nice and pretty like that. Take you some flux. Gonna dip it in there, whatever. All right, and this is ready to solder. Ready to pre-tin. Move your stuff aside. So here's the tricky part. Well, not tricky, but you know, the main part. So take your soldering iron. So on mine, it's got a little station. I have my wet sponge and then the Brillo pad, but the main thing is the wet sponge. Always come back after you get done soldering something and come back and kind of touch it up a little bit where the tip's nice and clean looking. All right. So what we're gonna do is you wanna put a little bit of solder on the tip first. So some guys, they'll just put it on here like this with the top tip being dry. That'll work too if you got a lot of power. But if you don't, if your soldering station isn't as strong, always add solder to the tip first. and then touch the wet solder to the wire. And that is going to make a heat transfer. Add to it, fill it up, whatever. After I get done adding wire, I'll leave it there for a couple seconds and pull it off. And that's soldered. That's tinned, I'm sorry, it's tinned. So where I'm adding the tin to at first is whenever this touches the wire, let me add a little flux here. See how it's kind of changing the color a little bit, it's getting too hot. I'll add a little bit of solder there to kind of cool that down some. So what I do there is once I put the tip on the wire, I add the solder right up against where the tip and the wire are touching. And then once you see it start kind of taking and you see the wire kind of start bubbling from the flux bubbling, then I add the wire through here and I add it to the actual wire. And I leave the soldering iron on the tip of the wire. You can do it on the bottom too if you want to. It just depends on preference, I guess. But I do mine on the tip like this. And I keep it, warmed up. And I add the solder to the top, and it will bleed down to the bottom. Once you get done with that, you leave it. You pull the solder off the wire. Leave the tip on the wire for a second or two, just to make sure it goes all the way through, and then you're soldered. Now, pretty simple. Black wire is the negative. Red wire is positive. Does it really matter? Yes, it does matter. Because if you decide to change, you got to change all your wires out. Now, this connector does not matter, does not care if it's positive or negative. But if you make this wire your positive, you have to make all your wires like that positive. So, just because this has positive, negative here, you can switch it if you really wanted to. But you have to have all your other connectors like that also. You have to make sure all your wires are flipped like that if you decide to do it like that. So the best thing to do is to just leave the black negative and the red positive. Now, I have the connector pre-tinned. Black wire, that's going to be the negative side. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to preheat the connector right quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out, because it looks a little, chunky like that. And we're going to add it to our wet sponge here. Clean it off real good. And that makes it nice and pretty now. So, let's put a little dab of solder on the bottom. All right, and then we're gonna take our tip and hit it right here on the connector, just to get this solder here pre-warmed up a little bit, where it's not ice cold. Once it's melted, take your soldering iron, take the wire, put it on there, and take the soldering iron and put it on the wire and leave it for a couple seconds. Gotta be patient and wiggle it back and forth. Bam. And so you want to do that. Now it looks like it's simple. People that don't do this or whatever, it's like, oh my god, how you do that. So the trick is you preheat the tin you added previously. Get that where it's melted, and as soon as it gets melted, you take your pre-tinned wire and put it on the connector, on the wire, on the connector. And whenever I add a little bit of tin to the bottom, that's where I'm gonna, so this part here is what I use to touch it here, because it's a smaller connector. And with that solder being wet on the tip, that makes the heat transfer almost immediately. And then I let the heat transfer through the wire onto the tip at the same time. You'll feel it sink down a little bit where it gets soft. You don't want to press really hard. Let's see. Keep the tip nice and clean. Sorry. Anyway, so you don't want to, press down super hard on this. Just enough force to push it down. We're talking just a little bit of force here. As it goes down, I'll wiggle this back and forth a little bit and kind of wiggle it back and forth. And you'll feel it kind of, wiggle into place and stop. And then you'll always hear it kind of squeal a little bit. That means you're normally all the way melted through. And, it's pretty much, where it needs to be. And leave it there for another couple seconds. And if you do this right, the wire is not going to get real hot. If you sit there and mess around with it for a long time, the wire is going to get super hot. If this wire is too hot to touch, then you need to go ahead and stop and let the wire cool off. You don't want this to heat up and go into the battery. So if you can't hold on to this wire while you're soldering, that means you're messing around too much with the soldering iron, not being patient, not holding it on there long enough or something, that you're having to keep adding the iron to the wire, and it's getting it really, really hot. So you should be able, once you figure it out, you should be able to hold this wire with your bare hands as you're bringing it down, and it's going to solder. If you have a soldering iron, that's going to work. If your iron is not big enough, if you have a little cheaper iron, always add solder to the tip first. Always add solder to the tip first. And the wet solder needs to touch the wire or whatever you're soldering to get the heat to transfer. If you got a little small tip and you got a cheaper soldering iron, it might not transfer as fast as what mine does. So make sure you use wet solder like that and touch that on the wire or the connector. See right here how it's kind of been sitting for a couple seconds, kind of getting a little chunky looking. So what I would do there is I would go ahead and clean it again and add it to it. You want the solder to be nice and shiny looking. It needs to be like chrome looking, you know, nice and shiny. Whenever you touch the tip to the wire to make it have a good heat transfer. Now, you don't have to, but that's what I do. That makes it transfer a lot faster. You know, I had a cheaper soldering iron for the longest, so I had this kind of habits. I have a better soldering iron, have a nice wide tip, so it's not as bad. Now, that's one side solder. Now, if you look at it, it's nice and even all the way across. You know, it's kind of shiny looking. You know, it's all the way down. It's not melted or anything. In my opinion, that's about perfect. You can't get much better than that. So we'll take our vice grips and flip them over. Make sure that these don't touch. All right, so that's the positive side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this off about the same length. You know, I'm coming here like this. I'm gonna cut this off right here. You know, about the same length. And we're gonna hold on to the wire. Because we don't want this wire flopping down and hitting, you know, anything down there, because this, you know, this terminal right here, that's live. So if this wire touches this, it's gonna start arcing, and you know, it's gonna mess the battery up, or it can. If it's a cheap battery, it'll mess it up. Even these good ones do the same. You don't want these things to arc. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut this off and hold on to the wire. Make sure the wire don't flop around, just like that. Now this plug is just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna hold on to this, save it for later if I need it. And while the wire is cut and not exposed on the end, pull your thing off, your little cover, and add the other cover onto it. That way you have less chances of it. So if you pre-strip this wire, you got the wire sticking out, and it's easy to be a little fumbly and drop this wire onto this connector. And if you hit the negative, it's gonna arc. So with this being like this, you have a less chance of it happening. Just little tricks I've learned, you know. It seems like it's common sense, but you know, if you're not really used to it, you don't know any better. So I'm gonna hold on to it, make sure it don't go anywhere. Now there's probably better ways to do this stuff, guys, but that's how I do it. I don't have any problems. So that's the last connector we're gonna do. So it'll be the exact same way as before. We'll come in here, we're gonna, you know, kind of measure about how far it's gonna be. And we're gonna strip it with a little bit with a knife or whatever. So you wanna use a stripper, that's fine, it don't matter to me. As long as it gets stripped. Get this nice and, you know, back twisted up, whatever. We're done with the knife, we'll pick the knife up. Add a little bit of flux. All right, want to make sure this is nice and away from the connector. Then we'll do the same thing we did a minute ago. Take our tip, it's all crusty looking. We're gonna hit it on our sponge. Like that, you know. Got a little bit of shit on the end of it, you know, little chunks, whatever. But the Brillo pad. That's what I'm doing with that. All right. Come here, we're gonna add a little bit of solder to the tip. To the flat part. I'm gonna take the wet solder and put it on the wire. The wet solder is what makes the heat transfer. So if your wire is getting hot where you can't touch it, most likely what you're doing is you're not putting any solder on the tip, and it's not really transferring any heat to the wire. It's just making all the plastic shit hot. All right. So it's a little crusty looking. I'm gonna go ahead and clean it off. I like to keep my tip clean. The cleaner it's gonna be, the better the easier it's gonna be to weld. No, solder. So I'm gonna add a little bit of solder to the bottom, because we're touching this part of the tip to the wire once it gets, pushed down. All right. So we're gonna take our iron right here. We're gonna preheat this right here. Gonna get this preheated. A little funky little. Here it squeaks a little bit. That means it's melted. And then bam, we'll set it right there. Add the tip to it. Kind of wiggle it as it goes down, and we're done. Just like that. And that is ready to go. Now I want to show you something really quick. So I added flux to it. So you see right here, you look right here, the little drip right here. That was about to drip down onto the other connector. That's why I went ahead and try to be a little quick about it, because that right there, if that drips down and touches it right there, it's going to arc. Now more than likely it's not going to hurt anything. It'll just kind of flash right quick, a little quick spark, and it'll probably melt whatever touches. But you want it to happen at least as possible. So once that gets done, you either take your soldering iron, and with a steady hand, you can sometimes, touch it up right there. Really, what I need is one of them sucker things, one of them solder suckers. There we go. Just kind of take it like that and spread it out a little bit where it's flattened it out some. There we go. Yeah, I need to get one of them sucker things, one of them solder suckers. Anyway, and it looks really, really good. So you can see a little bit of wire sticking through. I don't like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know what you call it, but I'm gonna add a cap to it. I believe that's what it's called. I'm gonna cap the wire. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna come in here, add a little bit of solder to the tip. I'm gonna touch it really quick, and we're gonna cap the top of the solder. Be kind of quick. You don't want this thing to move, just like that. That's perfect. And now I've added like a little cap to the top of it, and that keeps it better connected, in my opinion. So now mine has a little wire sticking out. So right now this battery is live. So if you don't watch it and you let this spring open and these touch this tool here, it's gonna arc. So what I do is I hold this really tight, and I just go really easy. Take your time. Like that. Really what I should do is I should take that wire out, but I haven't yet. So, and there it is. We can pull this out. As you can see, since I added this, now I know what I'm doing. I probably don't have to use this method, but it helps. If it does get kind of warm, this keeps the little terminals in here in place, keeps it nice and level. We're coming in and out crazy, but if you take a lot of time, if you mess around with the solder too much and it's getting the wire and stuff hot, you're probably getting the connector hot too. And it's really easy to melt that plastic, and it moves that little thing around, which will make it a pain to plug battery stuff in. So yeah, it looks really, really good. Looks fine to me. Looks really good. That's not coming loose. So the only way it's coming loose is if it breaks here or if it comes off the connector. So now the reason why I did that a minute ago, where I had the little drip, whatever. So what happens is if there's a big drip right here, it'll stop the little cover from sliding on. So it fits in pretty tight. And there's a big drip, or you got a big lava solder on the side of this these little things or whatever. It'll make it a pain to get the little cover on. But since I don't have that problem, it pops right on. And there it is, guys. There's 2 batteries ready to go. Ready to put on my Max on my 2.0. The 2.0 will probably ran today. I'm gonna try them out. But yeah, that's that. And depends on how cold it is this weekend. I might not run it at all, and I might break out the max and go ahead and move the chassis over and put the long chassis on the truck. That's gonna have to be the motor out. I mean, everything that's on the chassis has to come out. The front module out, rear module. I'm done soldering, so I can take my mask off. But yeah, it's gonna be to do the max. I might video that also, but you gotta take all the stuff off the max: the motor, the ESC, the receiver box, the servo, and all that other stuff. So it's a pain in the butt, and it's gonna take a little while. So I want to make sure I have time to do that. I want to wait till I get the new body in. So Traxxas was out of bodies, but they had the clear one in whenever I ordered my stuff. So I went ahead and got a clear one coming. It hasn't even shipped yet. So what I'm probably gonna do is I'm probably gonna take my old blue and black body and cut it down the middle, or I'm gonna cut it where I need to, where I'm able to stretch the body some and put the body on the new body support and make it work until the full size body comes. But yeah. Anyway, guys, that's that. After you get done soldering, what I always do is I'll take my flotation thing, I'll clean it off really good, and I'll go ahead and cut the power supply off, and then I'll come in here like this, and I'll just kind of dab a little bit of solder on it like that, just to keep the tip nice and clean. Just like that, and then kind of roll it around a little bit while it cools off. So the only area you're going to be soldering or whatever and adding the tin to is from here to right here. You don't add the solder here. That's not part of the tip. I mean, it is part of the tip. That's not part of the tip where you're going to solder. You don't ever want to start soldering through here and like adding and trying to solder with this part of the tip, because then it's going to start getting stuck in the, an actual handle or whatever. So only solder from the tip to this little line right here where it's colored right here. And once it cools off a little bit, you're able to put your put the handle in the module, and you're good to go, and let it cool off. But yeah, guys, that's it. We're at 30 minutes here, so that's a long enough video. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or whatever, let me know, and I'll help you guys out. I'm pretty good at soldering. I'm not the best, but I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at it. It's not very hard to do, and yeah, if you guys have any problems or anything, just let me know, and I'll help you out as best I can. See y'all later. Peace.